So good evening, everyone. I'm going to read some quotes this evening, and you're going to bear with me because as I was preparing for this evening, I had, let's call it the vision of going online and just checking out what people have said about doing right. And I'm going to start with Martin Luther King. He says, on some positions, cowardice asks the question, is it safe? Expediency asks the question, is it polite or is it politic? Pardon me. And vanity comes along and asks the question, is it popular? But conscience asks the question, is it right? And there comes a time when one must take a position that is neither safe, nor politic, nor popular, but he must do it because conscience tells him it is right. He goes further to say the time is always right to do what is right. And our initiative is the DoRight Initiative. We want to welcome you this evening to another meeting or discussion using this platform. We're very glad you could join us for this 1-hour session. And who are we? The prosperity of any nation is anchored on values and the uprightness of the people and their leaders. The DoRight Awareness Initiative is a national movement that was built in Q1 of 2022 to mobilize like-minded Nigerians like you and me who understand the actual damage that lawlessness and moral decadence have done to our nation. The imperative of reversing it is to join in developing a movement to initiate a rebirth, new mindsets, where every Nigerian sincerely desires to do right everywhere, every time. We aim to be the credible voice that boldly speaks the truth while demonstrating and championing causes that improve the quality of lives of people at local, state, and national levels. Here, I want to emphasize, we are non-partisan and non-religious in our initiative. Our vision is to reawaken and entrench uprightness in Nigeria. This evening, we have a theme. But last year, we had several meetings in this environment as well, where we spoke to upright citizens that have been identified across board on topics that are related. Doing right in the nation. What does it mean to do right in the nation? What does it mean to do right in the family? What does it right in the workplace? Or even in business. However, this year, as part of the drive, we have selected very peculiar people that we believe can lend their voice to this topic and further guide us in our strive to push this initiative forward. In July of this year, we were opportune to have Dr. Christopher Kolade to speak about this topic. And today we have someone very special in our midst. But before I read his profile, which has insisted to be quite short, I want to just let you know that the theme for today is doing right by our nation, my role, your role, our role. We are awakening and entrenching uprightness in Nigeria. We're not pointing fingers at anyone because three will point back at you or point back at me. And we're not saying that we haven't done anything that's wrong. We're not perfect people. However, we want to ensure that we create leaders in our population that tomorrow will make the change that starts with me and starts with you. Right away, I want to go on to the introduction of our special guest speaker this evening. Very excited to have him on board, and we're very grateful he could make out time to participate with us today. His Excellency Donald Duke is a Nigerian lawyer and politician who entered into public governance for the first time in 1991 when he was appointed as a member of the board of directors of Voice of Nigeria. He was thereafter the Commissioner for Finance, Budget and Planning of Cross River State in 1992. He returned to private life for a short stint, and in 1996 was appointed as a member of the National Economic Intelligence Committee, as well as the Federal Economic Council. Subsequently, he took on other public assignments before becoming the governor of Cross River State, Nigeria, from 1999 to 2007. He is described as a man with a vision and was the 2019 Nigeria presidential candidate for the Social Democratic Party. A family man, he is married to Her Excellency Donald Duke, and the couple are blessed with children and grandchildren. Your Excellency, it's an honor to have you on this platform. We welcome you, sir.
Thank you, Adesha.
You're most welcome.
Before we go on, how's the sound quality? Are you hearing me? Because you were breaking up a bit while you were making your
So I'm breaking up a bit. Okay, so maybe I'll just... Can you hear me now? Can you hear me? Is this still breaking?
Good.
Okay, so I'll just switch my... I'll switch like I said. Is it better now?
Off and on, but let's see. Let's make the best out of it.
It's better now. Okay, thank you. Okay, I'll just put on the second video and then just focus. Okay. So you're welcome once again, Your Excellency. It's a pleasure to have you here in our midst this evening.
Thank you.
And I want to start with my own questions first, and thereafter I'm going to ask the audience to please participate. Feel free to raise up your hand, but preferably put your questions in the chat box so that we can read them out and save time. We only have 1 hour, and I'm done my intro in 6 minutes, so not bad for a start. So my first question to you, sir, is this. Why do you feel such an initiative is important to Nigeria and for Nigerians at a time like this?
Well, firstly, we're all stakeholders. We all have ownership of this entity called Nigeria. Unfortunately, some of us behave like tenants and others are landlords, and therefore they have a prerogative over the rest of us. No. What we leave behind is going to be inherited by our children. And I ask myself, is this what I would like to live for my children? My parents may not have left the best space for me, but certainly I want to leave it better than I met it. And so I think an initiative like this, where we have as many participants hearing the voice and hopefully pointing us out to a better Nigeria, would be helpful. Unfortunately, we, the elites, have dropped the ball because we should have been leading the charge, but better late than never.
You just said now we've dropped the ball. You have dropped the ball. Okay. Can you just expand on that a bit more?
Well, the word elite is from the word enlightened. And in every society, the enlightened ones lead the charge. That's why we go to the best schools, we have the most exposure. That's what drives a society. In some environments, the best schooled are in the public service. They're purposely recruited into the public service. Unfortunately for us, our elite are more, without being too hard, but it is pertinent to state, they're selfish. They consider their elitism to be about themselves. Now, elitist is different. Elitist is when you look after only your kind. But to be an elite is what we all aspire to be, the leaders of society, the enlightened ones in society. So they dropped the ball. I think perhaps if you go through our history, they were disconnected after the first coup, and they never sought to reintegrate themselves into society. I remember running as governor in 1999. I was barely 37 years old. And there was more pressure on me not to run than to run. Folks who were close and who, in their opinion, were giving honest advice felt that I should pay more attention to myself and my young family at the time than worry about Nigeria's problems. But I thought differently. I felt that it would be a waste of my youth if I didn't consider myself valuable to help resolve the problems. Youth is good. Youth and experience is better. I have been very fortunate. Like you mentioned, I was at the age of 30, Commissioner for Finance in Cross River State. And at the age of 34 or so, I was a member of the Federal Executive Council and the National Economic Council. We're not giving enough exposure to our young people, right? We need to do a lot more of that. We also need to ensure that they're better grounded, because whether you like it or not, sooner or later, they will take over the state. But the issue is how well grounded and how well exposed are they to take on the responsibilities that is theirs to inherit. So, I believe that when people go to university and all that, and at the same time, we don't prepare the grounds for them to take over the state in different sectors of the economy. That's what I mean by that.
Just for those of us who are just joining, thank you very much, sir. For those of us who are just joining now, just to let you know that we're the DoRight Awareness Initiative, and our theme for this evening, we're talking about doing right by our nation, my role, your role, and our role. And we have His Excellency Donald Duke taking the center stage to answer questions and just share his thoughts about how we can move forward in our nation in a positive light. I want to also emphasize again that we're non-partisan and non-religious. So in our conversations, kindly just stick to the focus of why we're here so that we don't get derailed. We only have just less than an hour left. Thank you, sir, for your kind comment. So it's very clear, you talk about the elites, and one of the things that you talked about is preparing them for tomorrow. You are fortunate to be able to have an exposure very early on in life. And when I was looking at your profile and reading through the work that you had done, it was quite interesting to see that even in the federal government space, you were also quite instrumental in developing some policies and ensuring that as a nation, we begin to take shape as we move forward. So that's quite encouraging. Another quote, like I said, I have some quotes this evening, so bear with me, okay? It says, it's from a gentleman called Julius Caesar Watts. He was an American, or he is an American politician, clergyman, and he used to be a Canadian Football League player. He says, character is doing the right thing when nobody is looking. There are too many people who think that the only thing that is right is to get by, and the only thing that is wrong is to get caught. This, when I read it, resonates a lot with our nation today. If you don't get caught, you get by, and no one seems to know, in your own opinion. And another thing that is in our nation today, we see a lot of times people are getting by, but showcasing the wrong thing to the people that are coming after them. So in your own opinion, I'm talking to general public now, because we're going to share this as far wide as possible as we can. How can we do right by our nation as people?
Well, firstly, I think we all have to see ourselves as builders rather than reapers. Unfortunately, Nigeria had a generation of reapers right from onset and not builders. So when we admire societies that have done well, we find that there has been a generation or several generations of people who built the nation, and what the beneficiaries or the inheritors of the system are those that we glorify today. We never had a generation of builders. We had a set of people, our parents and even theirs before, who the question, I want to leave a landmark. I want to know that after I pass this path, so few people could look back and say, okay, Donald Duke did this and that. And that's what I believe we all should strive for. Again, you need an environment that allows you to strive for these things, because we've never really put in a system. And like I talked about, the elite selfishness it's very difficult even for those who want to build to be able to contribute and build a nation. It's going to unfortunately hunt us for a while, but we need a reset of people who come into the public sphere with a total determination to make it right. I'm not asking for an unconstitutional reset. I'm asking for a constitutional reset whereby we're able to get someone to assume, or a number of people to assume leadership, not bogged down by ethnic or religious or selfish tendencies. The people who would vote for people knowing fully well that they cannot deliver, but because their affinity or relationship with them, they want to support at the expense of the state. How that would happen, the happenstance and all that, I don't know. But we're all guilty of by religion or some guided or misguided principle in electing our leaders. If we are able to get it right, even once, it will make a whole lot of change. Where we are today is very. You see, if we're talking about, let's take recently, Israel has been in the news. Now, if you look at the early Israeli leaders, the Golda Meirs, the Ben Gurions, and all that, those were builders. If you look at the early American society, the Lincolns and Jeffersons, they were builders. Even in the private sector, they had builders, the Vanderbilts, the Rockefellers, they were builders. You ask yourself today, who are the builders of Nigeria? The folks that are the early leaders, did they really build? Maybe a few of them here and there. What is the sustainability? What is the continuance of governance, which is hardly there? Everyone assumes office and personalizes it and wants to leave his own personal imprint. And therefore, we're always at the starting block. We're not making progress going forward in this regard.
When we think of doing right as an initiative, one of the things that we're very clear about is the fact that we're not looking at our leaders as the way forward. We're looking at ourselves first as the way forward. Because if you look at the leaders that we have today or will have tomorrow, just like you said, they come from the population that exists today. So what are we breeding for tomorrow? So in looking at the position that you just given now with respect to the elite and the disconnect that you mentioned, you talked about the fact that for us to be able to do right by our nation, there has to be some form of a reset. You have spent over 60 years here, and at a young age, you were privileged to be opportune to be able to cut your teeth in the real heart of the matter as you had a passion for. Today, that's not the case that we see around us today, okay? So looking at it from the fact that we want to not look at who is the leadership per se, they're important, but the people that are around in the nation today, in terms of building blocks, practical steps, what would you suggest as a way to reset, as a way to build?
Well, this is where all of us are involved. Carefully examining those who put themselves forward for various leadership roles, either at the state, the local government, or the national level. We are beclouded by all sorts of prejudices that do not bode well. I mean, you hear people saying that, I know this guy will not do well, but this and this, and one reason or the other. So democracy affords us the opportunity to choose our leaders, but it also does not interfere in that choice. So the prejudices can becloud the quality of the leadership. We must ask ourselves, as a nation, not as individuals, but as a nation, what do we want? We're as endowed as can be. You can't, in fact, I believe we're so endowed that we're spoiled. We're so endowed that we could be whatever we want to be. So the problem is not the nation itself, it's the individuals, the collective of us as Nigerians. Um, do we want a nation state that we all can be proud of? Or we want a nation state that is dominated by one ethnic group or one religious group or by a few people here and there? Because, frankly, the question really lies with us, what we want to be, what we want to do with the nation. And democracy affords you an opportunity, affords us an opportunity every 4 years or thereabout to choose the sort of leaders we have. But we haven't gotten over our primordial instincts. Primordial here being either religious or ethnic or even personal. So sorry, I'm repeating this, but it all lies with us to reset this country. Unfortunately, leadership after leadership has been rather poor. Each set that comes in, you hope it's going to be better, but it turns out to be worse than the previous set. So, except we take the leadership question very, very seriously, knowing that the actions or inactions of a person in leadership will affect all of us, we are going to go down the drain. It starts with electing the right person who will now, in turn, put together a leadership. And we are so diverse and so endowed that you can find quality each and every state, each and every corner of this country. But if you continue to allow primordial instincts to determine those we would put in leadership positions, we're all going to suffer from it. We need to take more than a cursory interest in our country. We are losing too much. Some of our best are eloping the country as fast as they can. And we're getting to a point where there's little or no hope going forward. Those who should be taking over the country in the next few years are leaving the country in droves. Those who are left behind are so ill-equipped, they have no role models to emulate. And it's quite frightening if you take a trajectory of where we are today and where we could be along the path that we're pursuing. It is frightening, very frightening.
Indeed, it is frightening, but then we have hope. If you're just joining us, good evening. We're the DoRight Awareness Initiative. Our vision is to reawaken and entrench uprightness in Nigeria. And this evening we have His Excellency Donald Duke as our guest to share his thoughts on doing right. And as I said earlier, if you have questions, kindly please put them in the chat box. There'll be a section very soon where I'll ask people to also raise their hands if they have questions. I have one question now here, sir. It says, from McCain, it says, sir, why do you feel large section? Sorry, excuse me.
Sorry, you're breaking. I didn't hear that.
Can you hear me? Am I back?
Yes, you're back.
Hello?
Yes, you're back.
Okay, so forgive me. Can you hear me now, please?
I'm hearing you momentarily. I'm hearing you.
Okay, all right. So I'm going to get to the chat very quickly because I had a question there. It says, why do you feel large sections of the populace are so comfortable with leaders of such low capacity? How can we raise the level of expectation and accountability? It speaks exactly to what you were just talking about now. So I know you've already identified some of the points that this question may have raised, but if you're quite clear to elaborate a bit further, we'll appreciate that, sir.
Okay. First of all, the bar has been dropped so low that people are not beginning to even expect much from their leaders. Then, like I said previously, we're so primordial, and that's because we feel the level of want in society is such that we feel that except one that is from our primordial sentiments, which is either religion or tribe or personal access to is the only way out for us, which is rather sad because the twin problem of democracy is illiteracy and poverty. It's a terrible mix. Democracy cannot thrive as expected in a society where there's mass illiteracy and mass poverty, which is the Nigeria of today. Because when it comes to that, it becomes survival of the fittest. And survival of the fittest, say in the aircraft, you wear your mask first before you start considering what your neighbor's doing with their mask. So that's where we are. Even the elites are beginning to suffer this, and that everyone is trying to take care of themselves first. Now, we need to go beyond that. We need to, if we don't broaden that scope, whereby we have a mass, widen the elite scope where poverty is drastically reduced. And it has been done in several societies. It's not that it's unique to us. You know, the societies that have crashed their poverty rate almost in half in the last, over the last generation or so. We can do it, but we need to have a leadership that is focused to do it. You see, when you take a cursory look at society, I think I mentioned this to you, an elite class is a very small class, not more than 1 or 2% of the population. So you see the same folks repeatedly over and over again. Unfortunately, and I'll use this example but it's an unfortunate one. If there's a plane mishap, I can bet us in this forum that we will know someone on that aircraft. It just shows how minuscule elite class is. It should have been widened much more. But because of these uncertainties that have grappled the nation state, we have not been able to widen it as much as possible. And those who have the skills, like the Bible says, he that has, even that he that does not have, even that which he has will be taken away from him, is what we're experiencing as a nation. So we have a large mass of trained personnel, medical, technological, engineering, and all that, mass droves going to societies where they can better express themselves. So something drastic has to be done to not only expand the population to incorporate most of us. Most of us are not part of the economy. They're just the periphery of it. Very few people are operating within the Nigerian economy. Are you there?
Oh, sorry, I was muted. So I'd say a lot of people will be looking out to also hear what the way forward. But let's just also hear a bit about your experiences. For those of us who are online, remember you can put your questions in the chat box, and very soon I'll be going to you to ask your questions. I have another quote, and I have fact two. And it says, sometimes the hardest thing and the right thing are the same. And something similar says, what seems like the right thing to do could also be the hardest thing you have ever done in your life. From your own personal experience, can you share with us what price you have had to pay to do the right thing?
Well, several. I perhaps would have had a better shot at the presidency of this country if I was more muted in my statements and speaking the truth. The level of sight is the most dangerous and imperiled path that our leaders have. If you're in a position of leadership, people grovel so much at you, and very soon, or sooner than later, you begin to believe that you are, perhaps after the Almighty, the most supreme of human beings. I was guided, or I tried to be guided by what is right, and not what is expedient. So a number of times, I fell foul of superior authority because I had to just speak my mind on what my conscience, what I could defend several years after. One of which was, of course, going into this third term agenda, which we had post 7. I think my state was one of the few that said a distortion of the Constitution would come back to haunt us. In '07, Umaru Yar'Adua visited me and asked me to run alongside him, even though I was running anyway. But it was clear that he actually stood a better chance of winning elections. And so we agreed that we'll run together. But that was not to be because I believe my stance on the agenda of a third term. I think, again, some people say maybe we should have had a third term, we would have been better off than we are today. But you see, you can't build a society around a few individuals. We must be guided by a grand norm, which is our Constitution. I think that I paid the price for that. And thereafter, the people say, "Oh, you can't control him. If you put him there, he's just going to do whatever he wants to do, and there'll be nobody to control." I don't know why you want to elect a leader and at the same time control the leader. You elect a leader based on trust. And if you trust someone, why do you want to put a rope around his neck and rein him in? No, but that's another story. That has happened. Another instance I remember, we had in Cross River State, 18 local government chairmen. Local government chairmen are under enormous pressure because they're the lowest rank of the leadership. They live amongst the people. The people have almost unqualified access to them. Governors are protected. The president is the farthest from the people. And so under a lot of pressure, you have them employing people. People come to them saying, "Oh, we need jobs and this," and they employ. So we had the local government system bloated by employees that they couldn't pay. So what we did was we took over the payroll of the local government system. In other words, you couldn't employ except the Ministry of Local Government gave approval. But we already had an over-bloated system, and we were going into local government elections. And folks come to you and say, "Oh, let's wait until after the elections before we downsize to a level where we can manage." And I'm saying, no, that's deceptive. Let's go ahead and get rid of these people because we can't keep them in the payroll. And let them not judge us by the numbers that we engage directly that we really don't have any responsibility for, but by other things that we have done as a state for our people. I did that. The political class in Cross River State was aghast that we would downsize on the eve of an election. But guess what? We won the election handsome. And so you find that people are not as dumb as we think. A lot of times we the politicians, the elected class, think that those that we lead are not dumb. They sometimes appear dumb because they're begging for favors, but deep down in the closet of their minds, they know what is right for them. So there have been instances like that, and even provisions where a government comes in and they're shortlisted. "Oh, you're going to be minister for this, minister for that." Some people say, "Look, this one is a loose cannon. Manage him carefully. Do you really want to bring?" For me, that's fine. I don't want to serve in a government that I have to explain several years policies that went wrong. I want to have confidence in whoever I'm going to serve with going forward because I live for posterity.
Doing the right thing can be hard. Sometimes.
It is very hard. It is very hard. In a society, people just get by. Let's manage. You see something obviously wrong, and they say manage. It reminds me of a contractor I had many years ago. I was building a small house in Calabar before I became governor, and it was a perfectly square house. But by the time he finished, it wasn't square any longer. And when I brought this up and brought it to the attention, he said to me, "Why are you behaving as if you've just come from paradise? Just manage it." And I had to demolish the house and start again. But that is really what most people just let's manage. But we admire good things, and that's why we're so quick to jump off an airplane and go abroad because things are done properly. We also have to imbibe that, do the right thing, do what is right for ourselves and for our people.
We're going to go to the audience in the next few minutes, but I want to share something. I was privileged to get this from you recently, your book. And it says, it's all about doing the right. The title is very interesting, Doing the Right Thing, the Donald Duke story. And it was published just after, I think you left the governorship position, if I'm not wrong, in 2007 by Brooke Craft. And I want to read an excerpt from it that I thought was very interesting. In chapter 1, The Miracle of a Vision. And the question was asked to you by the interviewer. He says, your late father, who was, of course, the chairman of the Board of Customs and Excise, was noted for his integrity. He was almost legendary for it. People talked of him as if he was larger than life when it came to matters of integrity. How much of that has rubbed off on you as the younger Donald Duke? And I'm going to quote you. You say, well, one thing I've learned is that money is a tool, not an ornament. And the acquisition of more than you require is a burden, not a sign of achievement. So the penchant to just acquire resource just for the sake of it does not hold any attraction for me, because I see money merely as a tool. A good farmer does not arrange an array of holes and celebrate them, but the holes are tools to be used for work. If that is your philosophy, then integrity is not part of it. It is when you have an acquisition tendency that your integrity becomes questionable. At the end of the day, what really stands you out is the name that you bear. It's the only real inheritance that you have. You can be rich today and poor tomorrow. Wealth may come and go, but your name sticks with you for the rest of your life. It's the only thing you can provide for your children as an inheritance. The challenge for me and my siblings is to improve on the name my father left behind and pass it on, because to package it as we got it and hand over to the next generation would not be success either. Frankly, as I said, one thing I did learn from my father was that wealth, excessive wealth, and I'm not preaching poverty here, but well beyond what you need is not a virtue. Once you imbibe that and appreciate that, integrity will follow. Hearing your words back to yourself again after so many years, because I know this was quite some time ago, what advice would you give our listeners, especially the younger generation, on how to do right, and live right for the next generation? Because we're having there's a lacuna, there's a gap between where you're coming from, right, where we are today, and where we want to go to. Our listeners, get ready for your questioning. But over to you, sir.
You know, I've had quite a few friends and colleagues who have held a public space, being governors and ministers, being people of the bracket high society. And quite a number of them have had their source of wealth questioned. Quite a number of them may be successful in their businesses or in their political life, but you won't see them as role models because of how they attained their successes. Growing up, I had a father who looked at me one day and said, I suspect you would play a role in the public space. I'm bequeathing a name to you without stain. I wish you do the same to your children. They're billionaires. They'll always be rich men. There'll always be wealth to acquire. I had an uncle, Dr. Paso Kigo, who once said to me that there were rich men in the time of Christ. There'll be rich men many, many years after I have gone. So the issue is not the wealth you acquire. Is one, what do you do with it? And two, how did you acquire it? And two, what do you do with it when you get it? Wealth can be burdensome if it's not used for a purpose. But it's very, very difficult to preach this to one who has nothing, which is a challenge we have. People who have nothing, it's okay, let me get the wealth, too much of it, which is also a danger because, you see, we need to fashion a society where you can be as wealthy as your talents allow you to be. We need, at the same time, we will not allow you to be so poor that you drag down the rest of society. This is a big challenge. And I don't say this lightly, and I want to emphasize this. There must be a minimum in which people cannot go beneath. Because if they go beneath, then the ugliness of society starts to change. That's when you start getting the terrorism. That's when you start getting the burglary. That's when you start getting the corruption and this and that and that and that. Now, so we should design a society that you cannot fall below a minimum bracket. But we're not going to stifle you if you achieve as much as you can, as long as you work for it. This is what I think is egalitarianism, an egalitarian society. So we all have a minimum bracket. How do we achieve that? We must ensure that everyone has access to sound education as a basis. That everyone has access to good health. If you have a sound mind and a healthy body, the sky's your limit. And wherever you attain, you cannot hold the others responsible. Now, the issue of corruption and all of those are institutional failures, okay? And we can deal with that if we really want to. We're not dealing with it. Our judiciary is one of the weakest of all institutions we have right now, but that's another story. So let's ask ourselves basic questions. Can we have a society where no one is allowed to fall below a certain threshold? And we have the resource base to achieve that. But at the same time, we'll not stifle anyone from achieving the highest heights that he or she can attain. That's what I wish for our society. That's the kind of society I believe Providence has provided us the ability to build upon.
As you speak, what comes to mind is a level where people can perform to the best of their ability because of the provision of the opportunities that gives them a chance to move forward. We have some questions online. Okay, sorry, go ahead, please.
Absolutely. Design a curriculum in an educational system whereby the best or whereby your innate abilities are brought to the fore. Because whatever you do, you're contributing to the betterment of society. Ensure we have a good health system. So when you have a good educational system that can produce the best in you, your innate abilities, and you have a healthy body and a sound mind, the sky's our limit. And collectiveness as society, it adds up to our collective growth. You see, at the end of the day, the personal assets, individual assets are all part of national assets. So if I build a great institution, it's part of the national asset of Nigeria. Too many people are demanding from too few people. We, the elites, are under enormous pressure from those whom depend on us for their survival. So we're under pressure to even break the bounds. I remember going to a ministry a couple of years ago to see the minister. The security person at the entrance happened to come from my state, and his greeting was so effusive. When I got back and I was leaving, I greeted him, of course, but I later learned he had asked my aide who accompanied me to please put word that he be security man at the minister's floor and not at the ground floor. And I asked why that's so. He said because big men go to the minister's floor and he'll get better tips if he were at the minister's floor rather than at the gate. Now, as comical as that may sound, the man is actually expressing the reality of his circumstance. His circumstance is that, look, he has one foot in the door, he has a job, but that job is not able to take care of his responsibilities. And if he's in a better floor, maybe the floor of the permanent secretary or the floor of the minister, you'll get more tips because that's what he requires to survive. That got me thinking. Now, he has an opportunity, he has an office, he has a job. How many have that? Most don't. And he, as belabored as his circumstance is catering for so many others. So the pool in the chain is enormous. What we're doing, the society that we're developing is not sustainable. It can't work. And that's why I asked for a reset.
back to the word reset. Okay, so I just want you to hold that reset in mind, and you're going to end with how we're going to reset when we're about to end. But I have some questions or some comments that have been shared online, and it says, some thoughts in my mind. This is Omobolanle Afolabi about this country. Some thoughts in my mind about this country. Can we have a new constitution in Nigeria? I see that our leaders in Nigeria are yet to place value on our citizens like they should. We need to look at how we operate from the three arms of government. Is Nigeria just for business purposes and power? Or we want to see our citizens excelling and put in policies that make citizens make progress? So I know you've spoken to this in some of the comments you've made. Do you want to make any further comments on this point I just raised from Omobolanle?
Well, I think she's right. We need to. She's absolutely right. Actually, it's spot on. What are we aspiring as a nation? What is our collective goals as a people? Are we in any way collectively aspiring to uplift our people, or we're just comfortable as long as our lot is better? I don't know, Bolande, I hope I've answered your question, or I've attempted to address it.
So we also have Ifeoluwa Kayode Edwards, who says we choose leaders from among ourselves. Could that be the problem? Where are we going to get the right people to vote in?
Well, the right people live amongst us. You've got to choose your leaders amongst your lot. And they're there. We're not short of quality people who could lead the country in different levels, at different spheres, at different sectors. But we are polluted by what I mentioned earlier, the primordial instincts and selfishness of the elite. So you want to make sure, first of all, how much access do I have to the person? If I don't have access to him, then how am I going to benefit? What is in it for me? Meanwhile, you're not in any shade in want. You just want to acquire more. So you find people who lead various sectors, the military, the economic sector, and even in a conversation, that these people have nothing to offer except the contact that they have with the leadership or someone who was introduced into the leadership. That is sad. Look, when you look at a federal executive council, starting from there, the president is one person. He's not going to have all the skills that is required. What he does have is something called leadership. He's not something where he can identify the right people alongside others, because it's not all about him. But even more so, he can motivate them to bring out the best in themselves. So today you have, when we select ministers, they don't even know the portfolio they're going to hold, even even after they've been screened by the National Assembly. Then the president sits down and just allocates office to them. I must have a passion for what you're giving. You can't make me minister of sports, for instance, and I'm talking of Donald Duke. You can't make me minister of sports and expect the best from me, because I don't have a passion for that. Neither do I have the skills to bring to bear. So you've got to first find out, put people, we use the phrase, the right in square pegs and square holes, or round pegs and round holes. You've got to find out where people can do best, right? And then in turn, getting to a particular ministry, have to find out whom they engage, who can do the right thing. I'll give you an example. When I was governor, after the set of commissioners and all that, I asked the basic question before appointing them: give me 3 or 4 offices that you think you would excel. I see something in you. I see some leadership quality in you, but tell me where you have a passion for, right? And give me 3 or 4. Then I can, then I can fit you into one that is available. But in turn, when you bring people for boards and parastatals, make sure that they are not people whom you have affinity with. because whatever decision they take, right, if it goes wrong, I'm holding you responsible. And people, the worst thing you could do in governing is allow people to be comfortable enough to feel that they can get away with anything. We all have to be on our toes. So if you don't get it right, if you have a responsibility and you don't get it right, you would be relieved of that responsibility, because keeping you there is shortchanging the people. Another example I'll give again from Calabar, for instance. One of the things we wanted to pride ourselves with was our sanitation, right? You couldn't talk of tourism and have an environment that is not sanitary. So we prioritize sanitation amongst other things. Initially, it was overwhelming for the Commissioner of Environment who was responsible. So I called him up and said, "No, you tell me, what do you require to make this ministry or to make your responsibility work?" And he gave me a whole list of things. And I said, "Okay, how long would it take you to make this happen?" He said, "If he had all this in 90 days, he'll get it right." I ensured I got everything for him. In 90 days, he didn't get it right. So I relieved him of his appointment. The same thing. When you set targets and these targets are not met, you've got to relieve the person so that the next person coming in is not too comfortable. Don't say, "Oh, the president or the governor is from my neck of the woods, so I'll get away with it." We've had a situation in Nigeria where we've had security challenges for the last probably close to 20 years. From 2003 to date, Nigeria has not been at ease. But nobody, no service chief, no one responsible because he failed until the 17th. That is wrong. That's not how you run it. You've got to be able to, if one is given a charge, given a responsibility, a lack of fulfillment, and he's kept on the seat, is shortchanging the people. It's not child's play. So I see service chiefs after service chiefs, and we're still having the same challenges, and they stay there. And the only lot that is better is themselves. Okay, and the society is poorer for it. These are things that we mustn't tolerate as a people.
You just answered very clearly and emphatically the question that Prospect Maduforo had asked. So I won't bother reading the question because you spoke to it directly. Make a change if we're not getting the right results. Okay. Daniel Udochi says that we had a few bright sparks in leadership at various levels, but these tend to fade away as soon as the leaders move on. Why do you think it is difficult to institutionalize doing the right thing in Nigeria? What would it take to create and sustain strong institutions that are not centered around any individual?
Okay. As the initial stage, a nation is actually could be akin to a family. In a family you have the parents, and they are the yardsticks. They are the role models of how that family would develop. Okay, and if they live upright, then the family values are entrenched. And if they don't, their role models, the children see this and take it. So if you have a family where you see the parents fighting and quarreling and abusive to each other, going down the line, the children, upon getting married, they don't know it. The same thing. We need individuals who can build the institution thereafter. If you are in charge of a certain institution, whatever it is, and you do it right and inculcate that value of doing the right thing, those who come after you see you as a role model. Now, let's take an institution, a foreign institution, let's take the FBI. Till date, even though there were excesses and all that, that institution was built around probably about 100 years ago, 1921 or thereabout. The first leader was J. Edgar Hoover. He's still the reference point in how that institution to work. Now, the FBI is the United States Federal Police. Okay, it's like our own Nigeria police force. Yes, they may be allusions to the excesses of J. Edgar Hoover, but he built an institution that has been sustained thereafter. And this can be replicated in others. Unfortunately, in Nigeria, because people are not appointed for the right reasons and are there for reasons that are not reasons that are not kosher. We are starting block. We're not building institutions. So take whatever institution. Take the judiciary, for instance. Right? We started well. Right? Our society has grown ever so fast from 1961. I think at independence, our population was barely 47 million people. Today we're 200 plus. But apart from maybe the first set of leaders of the judiciary, everything went down the drain. The standards for the appointment of judges, no one even knows. It's probably described as, whom do you know to recommend you? And this is what is replicated in every sector of society. So every sector is broken down. It's nice to say, yes, we'll build institutions, but someone has to build an institution. And so they need to and that's why I talked at the beginning of a builder generation rather than go straight to a reaper generation. We didn't have a generation of Nigerians who set out to build and formulate a society from get-go. From get-go, most of us, what can Nigeria do for me, rather, not the reverse. So you have a minister who bans the importation of certain items because he has set up a factory to produce those items. I got this from Lee Kuan Yew's book, From Third World to First World, where he mentioned specifically Nigeria. He had visited Nigeria in the 60s, had an engagement with a particular minister who told him that he was banning the importation of shoes because he had set up a factory to make shoes. That's sad. That is very sad. It's all the inherent selfishness in our society. Besides, it comes again back to the first question: how much do you really need to lead a decent life? What I find about elites, particularly elites in the financial and business sector, each one is competing to be richer than the other person, right? So one of the weakest or one of the most dangerous institutions in our country today is the banking sector. The banking sector is not aiding the growth of Nigeria, but just aiding the growth of its own shareholders and owners. Okay, there was a time in this country where you couldn't own more than 5% of the bank. Today, you can own a bank just by yourself, and that's dangerous. You're collecting money from people and supporting yourself, and rather the whole society. So there's so many things that are inherently wrong in the system that needs to be cleansed. But again, where do you start from? It starts from whom do you elect as a national leader, and thereafter, or at the state level, and thereafter it percolates to the various sectors.
So I'm just looking at the questions I've been pouring in. You asked for questions at the beginning and they trickle and now they're poured in. However, we've come to two minutes. Can you hear me?
So I'll take it. I'm hearing you, and I'm hearing you, and I'm willing to take as many questions as.
Okay. So we're mindful of the hour, so we're just going to crave your indulgence for an extra 15 minutes. We've never done this before, but I think it's just expedient that we just try to maximize the opportunity that we have right now. I'm going to take something from Latif Adebayo. It says, more often than not, leaders in powerful positions are people that require to be experienced. However, they are young minds who can make huge changes that are not given the platform or given the opportunities to showcase their skills in terms of leadership. How do we as a nation begin to engage younger people politically? Okay, so I will emphasize here, as an initiative, we're non-political, we're non-partisan. We said that from the very beginning, but the DoRight Awareness Initiative, and we believe in the reawakening and entrenchment of uprightness in Nigeria. So what we're about to see, what we can do as individuals to make a change in the environment around us and produce leaders for tomorrow. But sir, Your Excellency, can you also address this point as well? I know you talked about it as well, because some of the things you talked about are coming up in the questions that have been shared online or during the chat box.
I just want to go and buy milk so I can eat Gary or something.
Okay, so please mute your mic if you're not muted, please. The Gary drinker, we appreciate you. Thank you. Your Excellency.
Yeah, I think Latif came a bit late in the discussion, and I talked about youth.
Yes, exactly. Yeah.
I said something about whether you like it or not, sooner than later, these people we call youth would assume the stage and run the country. And so the sooner you give them the exposure and prepare them for leadership, the better. I was very fortunate. My politics started in university. By 30, I was a commissioner and all that, blah, blah, blah. I would like to see a lot more young people given that kind of exposure. When we were in Cross River State, we had an internship program where you at various sectors, various ministries and all that, you get young people to shadow what governance is all about. Governance should not be mystic. It's something we all should be comfortable with, exposed to. But we're not doing enough of that. It is also very dangerous when you get young people who do not have the exposure or the experience into government. And we have suffered from that. You recall that those who took over government in 1966 in Nigeria were in their mid to late 20s. The Nzegu, the Ifejunas, those folks who did those coups, even the Theophilus Danjuma, Yakubu Gowon was 32 when he became head of state. They don't know adeptly the history of the country. They have their blood is hot, if I may use the term. But you see, it's like a car with a very powerful engine. Youth is a very powerful thing, but lacking in control. No steering, no brakes. And that led us to a civil war and cost us dearly. And we have not, to date, recovered from that 50 years or 53 years thereafter. So while youth is good and youth with experience is brilliant because you have the energy, you can dream unbridled, you are exploratory in your thinking. But if you do not have experience and know-how of the society that you are professing to lead, it becomes very dangerous too. So it's a twin thing. We need to do a lot more about youth exposure. A lot of young people coming to government, I find that they are related to the elites in society, right? That is wrong. We should broaden the scope. We should take people from villages and expose them to governments, because a child who grew up in an elite community like Ikoyi or somewhere would not want to be a local government chairman or something, you know. The child who grew up in Shomolu, I'm using Lagos as an example. I guess most of our audience is Lagos. Or if I go to my state in a community like, say, Akwabi or one of those places, he grew up in a village. If he doesn't have the requisite exposure, how is he going to lift that community up? And so you have, we use the term derogatorily that, oh, this is a village boy, you know, it's a local government chairman. So a lot of us, the so-called elites, disdain going to that level of governance. But if you don't get that level of governance right, society will not move forward. Everybody belongs to one local government or the other. But the federal government is so far from society. It's a policy organ. It's not an administrative organ per se. It's a policy organ, the federal government. The implementation organs are first and foremost the local government and then the state governments. So if you don't expose the mass of the people who come from the various local governments to leadership, society is doomed. So if you go
the point you made,
I'm going to add this. If you go to our National Assembly, for instance, and you sit in the gallery for 15 minutes and listen to the quality of discourse, after 30 minutes, you're going to ask yourself one question: how did these guys get here? The quality of discussion is so pedestrian, so poor. I mean, when people go for screening exercises at the National Assembly and they say take a bow, that take a bow is because they have no questions to ask them. First of all, you don't even know what ministry the person is going, so you can't ask the relevant questions. Then you start looking at, oh, did you do your youth corps? Did you do this? Recite the national anthem and all that. It's a joke. If you're going to be Minister of Aviation, I want to know what experience, what is your policy? What are you going to look at for in this ministry? What are the problems that we have? Nigerian airports are one of the saddest places to commute through. What are you going to do differently? You know, you want to be Minister of Health. My experience, the poorest ministers or administrators in the health sector are the doctors themselves. They're not trained for that. Right? You put them to administer that sector, it goes awry. So if you are an administrator, you're being posted to the Ministry of Health, what is your grand idea for the health sector? What do you require for primary health? Do you need a primary health care center in every ward? Is it based on population and all that? What is a minimum standard, and how do you want to administer it so it's enforced? Those are the things you look for. Your Minister for Health. Your Minister for Works. What is your road policy? What is the quality of roads? Why do we have roads failing all the time? You know, why are we not using concrete for road construction, for instance, rather than bitumen that we have to import? You know, and we're self-sufficient in cement today. Those sort of things. Those are the kind of questions and a reasoned National Assembly or State House of Assembly will be asking appointees, and not recite the national anthem or questions that are totally out of sync. And when you have none, you say take a bow.
Very clear points. Nothing to add on top of that now. I'll go straight to the chat. It says here, I visited Tinapa 15 years ago, Sekendi again, and it was an amazing project. How can we sustain such initiatives in Nigeria? And I'll go on to the next question, which talks about the same project. It says, sir, one of your laudable projects that endeared the nation towards you, especially those interested in changing the narrative of our nation via tourism, was the Tinapa project. It was a huge bang during your time as governor, but unfortunately, after your regime, it withered away without public clarity on why. It's a privilege having you here. Perhaps you can share with us why it's not operating at its optimum today. I ask because it takes vision to have that thought, and that's great leadership quality on display. So something similar question about Tinapa. We start something good, but continuity is another thing. So it's still about doing the right thing. About doing the right thing.
You know, first of all, I talked about the selfishness of leadership. I spoke about that earlier on. What we fail to appreciate that
okay, so you've gone on. Hello, sir.
Am I back?
Yes, you're back now. Yes.
I think he's back.
You're back, yes.
So we're all shift workers, right? You do your 4-8-year shift, then you move on. As a shift worker, if you're building a house, you don't always return to the foundation to start. Something I found interesting is that each successor thinks very little of his predecessor, even though the predecessor may have had a hand in instituting the successor. They believe they're more intelligent. Well, the sad thing is that the predecessor, I talked about the continuance of governance and looking at having a national goal or a state goal. What was our state goal in Cross River? Was tourism. We're the Niger Delta, we're the South, where oil is the richest part of the country. But for some freak of geography, we don't have that wealth. So for us, it was bring foot traffic into the state. Nobody goes to Cross River except you have a business. They have business to do there. It's at the end of the state. It's not like Benin, for instance, where you could be traversing through, or Kaduna you're going through. You only go to Crossriver because you have a purpose to go there. So we had to create an environment that people would want to come. So that was what Tinapa was all about. Tinapa is a trading free zone where anything apart from things that are injurious like firearms and all that could come to. So we found that, look, this is a country where you have, at that time, maybe 150 million people, and we're a consumer economy. So our dream was to drive traffic into Cross River State because people would not come to Cross River State except they had something to do. So we developed the ranch, the ranch and all that. And that, of course, drove a lot of traffic in. And in that part of the state, and the good news is in the north eastern part of Cross River State, it's right up in the mountain. You've got to make it attractive and all that. Now, in the south, Tinapa was developed. And that would have brought huge traffic. Not all of us can afford to go to Europe and America and all these places. But if it's an hour flight and you can go in there, it helps. So you have traffic. If traffic is coming into your state, then it's going to help the hospitality industry, the hotels, the food, the transportation. We did a study. I think KPMG, we engaged KPMG to do a study for us. And they envisaged that 3 million people would visit Tinapa annually. We're not talking of foreigners here. We're talking of Nigerians coming in. Some may come in several times, but in totality, 3 million people would visit Cross River State, Calabar for Tinapa. The minimum we estimated that each one would spend would be 100,000 naira. At that time, that would have been 300 billion naira. If you add the multiplier effect of that, which is over 1 trillion naira, it's almost 10% of our national budget. Just people coming in and going out and picking up things here and there would be enough to stimulate the budget and to stimulate the economy. And of course, it gives the government a wider pool to tax from. Even the little we did, the Christmas Carnival. The Christmas Carnival brought in 1 million people in that 1 month that we did. We're not looking, see, when we talk of tourism, people think, oh, we're looking at people coming from Europe and America. No, Nigeria is not ready for that. I wouldn't go into a country.
Okay, so we'll end in the next few minutes, but His Excellency will come back in a few, I'm sure when he can. But just to remind you who we are, we're the DoRight Awareness Initiative, and we invite people on this platform as part of our drive to showcase people who have done the right thing in the country today, and then also to address and guide on the way forward. What can we do as a nation? But more importantly, not just looking at our leaders, but looking at ourselves as individuals. What are you doing? What am I doing? What are we doing in the space within which we operate? Our leadership comes from our population, and population are groomed by the people that we are today. So who are you? Who am I in ensuring that we make a change for tomorrow? His Excellency, I talked about quite a few things around this. Talked about the elite and the role that the elite play. They talked about the fact that we have to be builders. There's a gap. So to build and have a focus in terms of the objective we're trying to achieve as a nation collectively. And he used the word reset. Reset, 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 reset. That in itself is something that raises a lot of questions in my mind personally. Because we talk about reset. What role do youth have to play in this form of reset? What role do the elders have to play in this form of reset? And the group of people who have been in leadership for a long time, what they need to do to make this change? So it's enough for us to look at them, but like I said again, we think about what we are doing as individuals. I'm hoping you can join in the next 1 minute or so, because we need to round up nice, and it's already 7:15. Usually we end the session bang at the hour. But we just want to take a few questions, and we are very appreciative of the fact that you have stayed on. So I'm going to invite His Excellency now to begin to make some closing remarks as we round up, please. Are you here now, sir?
Hello, are you there? Can you hear me?
Hello, sir. Okay, we can hear you now, sir. Yes.
Okay, thank you. In rounding up, I think the first question we ought to ask ourselves is, what sort of nation do we want? Now, this is a national discourse. It's not going to be answered by relatives in the village. It's we, the elites, are going to ask that question: what society do we want? And that's why people have been calling for a restructuring and all that, or rearrangement. What are our national goals? We divided ourselves into 36 states and a federal capital territory. Each state should not see itself as a political unit. It should see itself political and economic. Each state, we're so endowed, each state can bring something to the table. When in Cross River we were pursuing tourism, we were going to feed off all the other states in our neighborhood. We're going to ensure that, yes, you make the oil money, the billions and all that, but let's create an environment where you can spend that money. I like the story of Las Vegas. It was built by a guy called Bugsy. Bugsy went to the governor of Nevada and told him, this was the era of prohibition, all sorts of prohibition, and said, look, give me 1 mile strip in Nevada, far away from the rest of the country, which was centered in the east coast of the United States. And in that one strip, all the things that are considered wrong in other parts are allowed. So if it's gambling, if it's alcohol, you name it. He didn't ask for any money, he just wanted legislation. Eventually he got it. He got the mafia to invest heavily in it. Unfortunately, he didn't get the returns within the stipulated period. But today, what we discussed as Las Vegas came out from this idea. So each state has to bring something to the table to be respected on the table. If you have a country where you have those who contribute and those who do not. But again, with the restructuring would allow for this. Again, we need to have a structure that enables us to be productive entities. Nigeria today is designed as a consumer nation. As bad as things are today, as bad as the exchange rate or the currency is today, we are not austere. We're still living as if all is good. You look at the trip to the United States recently, when the president attended the United Nations General Assembly. The numbers that attended or were in New York at that time, 90% of them had no business there whatsoever. So we have not come off our high horse. We still think it's business as usual. The sooner we come off that, the sooner we design our nation to be productive, because literally 60-70% of what we import into this country can be manufactured in this country in the medium term, not even in the long term. How long did it take us to become self-reliant in cement, for instance? Once the will is there, we got there. It's a shame that we're not self-reliant in petroleum products. Those are low-hanging fruits. So we need to ask ourselves a pertinent question. Where do we want to take our society in? Do we want to be the dominant player, productive player in West Africa or all of Africa? I think Africa should be our playground. Today, you have free trade within Africa. But you see, a small country like Sao Tome or Equatorial Guinea, with the right policies, could be the manufacturing hub of all of Africa. And we will buy from them, which will be a shame because they have a small population, and all that. But the policies today are borderless. So I'm not going to pay for goods that are manufactured in Sao Tome and Equatorial Guinea. They can come to Nigeria duty-free. It will be a shame if we do not dominate that environment, because in another 30 years, we're told, we'll be the...
Okay, so I think it's gone off again now. But at this point, we really have to close the meeting. I just want to appreciate everyone for staying on. And as we round up here, I just want to say integrity is doing the right thing, even when no one is watching. And doing the right thing isn't always easy. In fact, sometimes it's real hard. But just remember that doing the right thing is always right. There's a quote from David Cartel. Remember to log on to our website to find out more about us. And we look forward to hearing from you. We look forward to you partnering with us on this journey of ensuring we all do the right thing. Thank you for your attention. Thank you to His Excellency Donald Duke for his insights and depth on this subject. We also appreciate his wife, Her Excellency Mr. Nari Duke, for also joining us here. For everyone who has joined us from all over the world, we just want to say a big thank you. We look forward to hosting you very soon on this platform. look out for other initiatives that we may have on this DoRight Awareness Initiative. God bless you. Thank you for your time. Have a wonderful evening.